We're rehoming your dog. Your niece's allergies. My parents said about my 11-year-old golden retriever I'd raised since college. But this is my apartment. I argued. Dad answered, we're on the lease too, majority rules. I packed up that night with my dog, taking my $3,400 per month payment with me. When rent was due, and they couldn't afford it alone, they looked me dead in the eye and said, we're giving your dog away. My dog. My 11-year-old golden retriever, the one I'd had since college. And when I dared to remind them it was my apartment, my own father just shrugged. You're outvoted. My stomach dropped. I knew right then my whole world was about to change. How could my own family do something so unbelievably cruel? That night, my apartment, my living room, smelled sickly sweet like lemon cleaner, as if someone was trying to scrub away the truth. My mom stood by the coffee table, clutching this clinical-looking rehoming checklist, like Cooper was a faulty appliance she was returning to a store. My dad was slumped in my armchair, arms folded, his eyes already tired, already defeated. Your niece is allergic, Mom said, her voice flat. We found a nice family. They have a yard. I looked down at Cooper. My old boy, 11 years old, his muzzle graying, but his tail still thumped a slow, rhythmic beat against the floor. He was oblivious. You're giving him away, I repeated, my voice sounding way calmer than the storm raging inside me. Dad didn't even blink. It's for the baby. And we're on the lease, too. You're outvoted. This is my apartment, I insisted, but Mom just lifted her chin. It's our family's apartment now. You'll get over it. I didn't argue. What was the point? Their minds were made up. I just walked into my bedroom, grabbed Cooper's leash, that worn leather strap that had been on so many adventures with us, and his canvas bag of senior meds. I moved with this frantic energy, like I was in a fire drill, every second precious. 10 minutes later, I walked out of that apartment, Cooper trotting faithfully beside me. My keys were still in my pocket. I wasn't about to leave them any leverage. Not a single thing. I was 32 at the time, and for years, I'd been the responsible one. The one who made real money. The one who had her life together. I worked as a project manager for a medical device distributor in Portland. It wasn't glamorous, no, but it was steady. My day started at 6:15 a.m. with black coffee and a quick calendar check because my job was basically herding cats, people who all thought their emergency was the only one on earth. I had auto-pay set up for everything. Utilities, insurance, rent, Cooper's senior wellness plan, even my IRA contributions. I loved the comfort of seeing paid in neat little rows. Cooper, my messy, shedding, slobbery golden retriever, was the only disorganized thing in my life, and I was fiercely proud of him. I got him in college. My roommates, bless their hearts, convinced me I needed something warm and loyal to keep me from studying myself into an early grave. He was with me through my first post-grad studio apartment, through my first terrifying layoff scare, my first breakup that felt like a demolition. When my mom used to say, "Oh, it's just a dog," I'd just smile and change the subject. I never had the energy to explain that he wasn't just anything. He was everything. The apartment situation, this whole mess, started years ago with a temporary plan. My parents had moved to Oregon from Arizona about 4 years prior. My dad's construction job slowed down, and Mom declared she was done with heat and dust. They didn't arrive with a financial cushion. They arrived with a U-Haul, 2 recliners, and this unspoken expectation that I would help until they got on their feet. At first, it was small. A few grocery runs, an extra phone line on my plan, a one-time loan of $1,200 for a security deposit that they swore they'd pay back when Dad started working again. Then, my sister Kelsey had her daughter, Avery. And suddenly, my entire family's universe rearranged itself around that baby. Kelsey, the golden child, was also the loudest. She had this way of saying, "I need help," that made it sound like a moral test you had to pass. 2 years after my parents moved, my landlord sold the building. My lease was ending. I found a newer place, a 2-bedroom on the east side, near my office, with elevator access, so Cooper didn't have to struggle with stairs. The rent was expensive, but for me alone, it was manageable. Then Dad said, if we could just stay with you for a few months, we could save. I made a spreadsheet. I always make a spreadsheet. I painstakingly wrote out the numbers: rent, parking, utilities, pet rent, and what I could realistically cover without touching my emergency fund. I told them I'd pay the rent, and they could cover groceries and utilities while they got settled. That's when they asked if they should be official on the lease, just in case. Dad's credit was better than mine, which it absolutely wasn't, and landlords like stability. I said yes.
Why?
Because I was tired, and because I naively thought having their names on paper would make them more careful, not more entitled. Oh, how wrong I was. The first month?
Fine.
The second month, Mom started buying house things without asking. New curtains, a lamp, a decorative mirror for the hallway. She'd leave the receipt on the counter, like a breadcrumb, a hint. The third month, Dad started using my parking spot because his back couldn't do the walk. When I pointed out the lease only listed one spot, he'd just say, we're family. But the real pattern, the truly insidious one, was money. My contribution wasn't a casual split anymore. It turned into me covering the bulk of everything, while everyone else treated my financial stability like a shared resource they could just dip into. Example 1. Dad's car broke down. He needed $2,600 for repairs, or he couldn't work. I paid the shop directly. I didn't trust cash. 2 weeks later, I noticed the shop had only billed $2,940. When I asked about the difference, he just mumbled something about them finding something else later and changed the subject. I never saw another invoice. Example 2. Mom convinced me to add them to my renter's insurance. So we're all covered, she chirped. My premium went up by $38 a month. Then, she casually mentioned she'd filed a claim for a cracked phone after dropping it in the kitchen sink. She didn't ask first. My rates didn't jump immediately, but I got the claim notice in my email like a sharp slap to the face. Example 3. I'd been sending my parents money each month to help with expenses. It started at $800. Then it became $1,500 when Dad's hours were cut. Then, without any formal conversation, it became me covering whatever they didn't. The difference between the rent and whatever they decided they could spare. In practice, it was $3,400 a month on average if you added rent, utilities, and all the groceries I ended up buying because no one else did. Example 4. Kelsey started showing up at the apartment like it was her personal daycare center. Just for an hour, she'd say, dropping Avery off with Mom while she ran errands. 5 hours later, she'd finally reappear. One time, she left a bag of special hypoallergenic food for the baby and said, "Can you Venmo me for this? It's expensive." It was $147. I paid it. It was just easier than fighting. Example 5. Dad asked me to co-sign for a small credit card to rebuild his credit. I said no.
So he got Mom to ask.
And when I still said no, they sighed, dramatically, like I'd refused to donate an organ. "After everything we've done for you," Mom said, her voice dripping with accusation. And I remember thinking, you mean after everything I've done for you? I tried boundaries. You know, the way people suggest online. Calm talks, clear expectations, I statements. I told them I needed a written budget if we were going to keep living together. Dad just laughed. Mom said budgets were cold. Kelsey said I was counting pennies like a miser. The flashbacks that still play in my head aren't grand, traumatic scenes. They're these tiny, insidious moments where I realized my place in the family. Like the Tuesday night, I came home late, completely exhausted, and found Cooper's water bowl empty, his meds untouched on the counter. Mom had been home all day. "Oh, I forgot," she chirped. "I was on FaceTime with Avery." Or the time I got a message from my landlord about a noise complaint. It was my dad, watching a game with his friends, volume blasting. When I asked him to keep it down, he snapped, "It's our home, too. Stop acting like you're the warden." Or the afternoon I opened a mail envelope and saw a notice addressed to all leaseholders about a rent increase coming in 60 days. I'd never gotten those notices before because I was the one who managed the portal. Seeing their names on that paper, written right next to mine, made my stomach sink. It wasn't just help anymore. They were anchored in my housing like barnacles, slowly but surely taking over. When Kelsey announced she was bringing Avery to stay for a couple of weeks because her boyfriend's roommate had cat hair everywhere, I said no, politely but firmly. And that's when the allergy story appeared, weaponized. It wasn't even Avery. It was my niece's new boyfriend's sister's toddler, someone I'd met once at a barbecue, who, according to my mom, couldn't breathe around dogs. Mom said Kelsey wanted to come over more often, and it would just be kinder if Cooper was with someone who can give him what he needs. I asked for a doctor's note. I asked why the solution was giving away my dog instead of simply not inviting allergic people into my home. Dad just sighed. You always make everything complicated. Mom looked at me, her eyes accusing. You're choosing a dog over family. That night, the night of the printed rehoming checklist, was the first time they said the quiet part out loud. Outvoted. What they didn't realize was that I'd already been quietly collecting my own evidence. Not because I wanted to fight, but because I'd learned the hard way that memories get rewritten in my family. 3 days before the dog ultimatum, I'd gotten an alert from my bank. An attempted payment was scheduled for my checking account, $1,180 to a storage facility I didn't recognize. It was labeled like one of my auto pays, but it wasn't mine. I opened my banking app and saw a new payee added. Evergreen Storage Unit. I didn't have a storage unit. I called the bank. Did you authorize this payee addition? The representative asked. No, I said, and my voice did that cold, quiet drop it does when something devastating clicks into place. They blocked the payment. Then I checked my email and found a confirmation, sent 2 hours earlier, like it assumed I was the one who did it. Same bank, same account. It meant someone had access. Someone was in my accounts. I walked straight to the apartment's shared desk drawer, where my mom kept important papers. There, tucked away, was a folder with my bank's letters in it. Not my landlord stuff, my bank stuff. The folder contained printed screenshots of my account summary. The most recent one was from just last month. Someone had been monitoring my finances. That was my breaking point. But I didn't react. I went quiet. I took Cooper on a long walk and I thought, just like I think at work, gather facts, build a timeline, protect the system. When I got home, I didn't confront anyone. I went into my bedroom, pulled out my laptop, and started a file. I wrote down dates and amounts from the last 12 months. The rent payments, the utility autopays, the times I'd transferred money to my parents, the shared expenses I'd covered. I exported my bank transactions into a CSV and highlighted anything that wasn't mine. There were more than I expected. 2 small purchases at a pharmacy near my parents' favorite diner, a $64 subscription I'd never signed up for, and a $312 cash app transfer labeled with my mom's initials. None of it would bankrupt me, but it was the principle. They felt entitled to my access. Then, the final nail in the coffin. I checked the lease portal. That's where I found the confirmation that made my hands go cold. A renewal request submitted under my login, asking to add Kelsey as an authorized occupant starting the following month. The request had already been sent to the property manager. I hadn't done it. I took screenshots of everything. The portal request, the bank payee addition attempt, the printed account summaries from that folder. I emailed copies to myself into a new, encrypted folder with a password no one would ever guess. I changed every password I had from my phone, then my laptop, my bank, my email, turning on 2-factor authentication for all of it. I called my bank and asked them to remove any device authorizations I didn't recognize. The representative read off a device registered 2 weeks ago that wasn't mine. I froze. That's not me, I said. They flagged it, locked my online access for 24 hours while they reset credentials, and recommended I file an identity theft report if anything else showed up. I didn't need drama. I needed control. I also called the leasing office and asked a simple question. If I move out, am I still liable if my parents die? The property manager was honest. All leaseholders are jointly responsible unless the lease is rewritten.
Okay, I said.
How do we rewrite it? She told me the process. A written request, proof of income for the remaining tenants, and approval by management. It could take up to 10 business days. Until then, everyone on the lease was liable. That night, after the dog ultimatum, I knew exactly what my plan was. I would remove my money from the shared situation, and I would remove my name from any legal tie I could without doing anything reckless. I wasn't going to sabotage them. I was going to stop carrying them. I packed quietly. No drama, no yelling. I moved my essentials first. Laptop, documents, Cooper's food and meds, my folder of receipts, and the fireproof envelope where I kept my passport and my car title. I left the furniture I'd bought. I didn't want a scene over a couch. I took pictures of my room and the shared spaces for my own records. Then I called a friend and asked if I could crash for a week. At 1:12 a.m., I texted my parents from my car. I've moved out with Cooper. I'll communicate about the lease through the property manager. My mom replied immediately. So, you're abandoning us? I didn't respond. The next morning, I called the bank again. I opened a new checking account and redirected my paycheck deposit. I removed all autopays from the old account. I set the old account to manual only and moved the remaining balance out. I didn't close it yet because I wanted a clean record for any dispute. Then I called my credit card company and removed my parents as authorized users, something I'd added temporarily when Dad said he needed it for gas. The representative read back the address tied to the card, my old apartment, not my new mailing address. I updated that too. By noon, I had a consultation scheduled with a tenant rights attorney. It wasn't about evicting anyone. It was about making sure I didn't make a mistake that could follow me for years. The attorney, calm and matter-of-fact, told me to do everything in writing. If you pay another month, it implies consent, she said. If you want out, you need a paper trail. So, I sent a formal email to the property manager, requesting a lease modification, removing myself as of the next rent cycle. I attached proof that I'd vacated, a written statement, my new mailing address, and a copy of the moving company receipt for a small storage locker I'd rented for my things. I didn't mention the dog. I didn't mention the betrayal. I kept it procedural. The property manager replied with the same sentence repeated twice. Your parents will need to qualify on their own. They didn't. Within 48 hours, the calls started. First, my dad, leaving a voicemail like he was doing me a favor. We can talk like adults. Come home. You're making this harder than it needs to be. Then Kelsey, with her soft, sweet voice that always came with a knife. Avery keeps asking where you are. Mom is crying. Why are you doing this? Then my mom, escalating. You can't just cut us off. We're on the lease. That means you still have to pay. That's the law. I sent one text one time. Please direct anything about rent or the lease to the property manager. I'm not discussing Cooper. My attorney sent a letter the next day, certified mail, signature required, stating that I had vacated, that any further financial contributions were voluntary, and that all communication should go through legal counsel if they continued to harass me. The letter wasn't aggressive. It was a boundary in formal language. The rent was due on the 1st. I didn't send my usual transfer. I didn't log into the portal. I did nothing. On the 2nd, my dad texted, We're short. Send what you always send. I responded, I'm no longer contributing.
He called.
I didn't answer. On the 3rd, my mom texted a screenshot of the rent portal, showing past due in angry red letters and wrote, Look what you did. I stared at it for a full minute, then deleted it. Because what I did was stop being their safety net. The consequences were theirs to manage. By day 5, the pressure turned into bargaining. We'll keep the dog, Mom said in a voicemail, her voice tight with desperation. Just come back. We were stressed. We didn't mean it. Kelsey sent, If you pay this month, we'll figure out a plan. Dad tried a different angle. You're ruining your credit, too. Do you want an eviction on your record? That one was the only message that got a response, because it was true. While my name was still on the lease, I had exposure. I forwarded the text to my attorney. She replied with one sentence. Do not engage. We're working the modification. Let management enforce their process. The property manager gave my parents a deadline. Submit proof of income within 72 hours, or management would issue a notice to cure or quit under the lease terms. That notice arrived on day 8. My mom called me 26 times in one afternoon. I didn't answer. I blocked her number for 24 hours, then unblocked it because I wanted to see what they were trying. I turned her texts into a record, not a conversation. 2 weeks later, the lease modification was denied. My parents couldn't qualify without my income. Management offered them 2 options: find a co-signer, not me, or move out at the end of the month. That's when my dad showed up at my office. He waited in the lobby like a man who expected the world to let him in. My receptionist messaged me. Your father is here. He says it's urgent. I walked down, met him by the glass doors, and kept my voice level. This isn't the place, I said. He looked older than I remembered, but his posture was the same, demanding. You have to fix this, he pleaded. You can't do this to your mother. I didn't do anything, I told him, my voice unwavering. You chose this. His face tightened. You're really going to throw us out over a dog? I'm not throwing you out, I clarified. The landlord is. I moved out. I stopped paying. That's it. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me anymore, which was fine. I didn't recognize the version of him that thought he could vote my dog out of my life. He left without another word. Update: 3 months later, my parents didn't get evicted.
Technically.
They moved out before the final deadline into a smaller 2-bedroom in a complex farther out where the rent was lower. They had to pay a higher deposit because of the late notice on the old lease, $2,900. According to an email my mom accidentally CC'd me on when she complained to the property manager, Kelsey didn't move in with them like she'd planned. She went back to her boyfriend's place and started sending my mom long texts about being unsupported. The bank investigation closed 2 small disputed charges in my favor, the $64 subscription and the $312 Cash App transfer. After I provided proof, I wasn't the one who authorized them. They didn't call it fraud in the letter, but they reversed the amounts and advised me to keep my accounts separate. I printed the letter and added it to my folder anyway. My parents tried twice to schedule a family meeting. The first time, my mom sent a group chat message. We need to clear the air. I left the chat without replying. The second time, my dad emailed me a list of things you owe us, including a line item for emotional distress. I forwarded it to my attorney and didn't respond. Cooper, bless his heart, adjusted faster than I did. He absolutely loved my friend's backyard during that first week. And when I found a new 1-bedroom with a small patio, he claimed it like he'd been waiting for it his whole life. Final update: 6 months later, I signed a new lease, in my name only. I paid the deposit $1,250 without asking anyone for help. And when the leasing agent asked if anyone else needed to be on the paperwork, I just smiled and said, no, just me. My credit report stayed clean. No eviction, no collections, no surprises. The old lease account showed as closed with a 0 balance after my parents moved out and settled their final fees. I kept the email confirmation as proof and put it in the same folder as everything else, because I don't trust that my family will remember it accurately if they ever need a villain again. My relationship with my parents became smaller. We spoke twice on the phone in 6 months. The conversations were polite and shallow, like talking to coworkers you don't quite trust. Kelsey stopped texting after I didn't respond to her last message, asking if I could help with Avery's preschool registration fee for $480. I left it on read. The silence that followed was almost peaceful. Last week, I found the printed rehoming checklist in a box I'd accidentally taken from the apartment, a stack of papers my mom must have left behind. I didn't shred it in anger. I didn't mail it back with a note. I just folded it once, put it in my sealed folder, and slid it into the back of my closet, where I keep documents I never want to need but refuse to forget. That night, Cooper slept with his paw touching my foot, like he always had. In the morning, I deleted a recurring calendar reminder labeled Send Rent Split and watched the screen go blank. It was a small thing, a tiny square disappearing, but it felt like a door closing the way it's supposed to, quietly, firmly, and entirely on my terms. So, what would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to draw a line in the sand like this with your own family? Let me know in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear your stories.